Revisiting this area is kind of surreal. I was really down for it before we got here. Now I'm here and I'm like, damn, everything could have ended right here. My kids wouldn't have had no more father, you know, my family. Everything could have ended right here. I just came from my kid's house, putting gifts together, Christmas gifts and all of that under the tree. My ex, my kid's mother, she was like, you know, stay in the house. I said, I'm gonna go outside for a little while, see my friends, see my homeboys. I grew up in Brooklyn. I was born in East New York. I stayed in Flatbush for quite some time. From Flatbush, I went to Staten Island. From Staten Island, I went to Yonkers, Queens, you know, I did the boroughs. Got 6 kids, 1 grandson. Working for a company called Hastings. We deliver some of the most expensive beds in the world. Drake has 2 of them, $500,000 bed. You know, just working, taking care of the family, taking care of the kids, making sure everybody eat, making sure I eat.
Kings County Hospital sits in the center of Brooklyn. It's a level 1 trauma center, meaning we have on average at least 1,200 trauma admissions per year. A lot of the other trauma centers are predominantly blunt trauma, traffic injuries. Something like 30% of our trauma is penetrating, meaning gunshots and stabbings.
So as an emergency physician, and we work in a very busy county hospital, and we're a safety net hospital, so we see a lot of trauma coming from all over the borough. When the pandemic hit, there was a slight drop in the number of violent traumatic injuries that we were seeing because everybody was inside. But it was just kind of like it was like a ticking time bomb.
For a moment, everybody was off the streets, but very soon after, violence started to pick up. I remember there was a mass shooting and a stabbing within an hour while we had multiple patients intubated in the emergency department with almost nowhere to put them because our ICUs were full with patients with COVID respiratory failure.
As the pandemic started to advance and people started to come outside and the weather started getting warmer, we saw the rise in intentional violence.
Gun sales are up, there's more guns on the street. During parts of the pandemic, people were losing their jobs and there was a little more desperation as well.
Everybody being locked in, they not being able to do the things that they normally do. And then there's no resources, there's no basketball courts, community centers is gone. You had to have something to give them so they won't be out there going crazy.
It's good, bro.
All right. Drive safe, bro.
Thank you. How's everything?
How you feel?
I'm all right. Most of the pain is in the nighttime.
Okay, it could have been worse.
The weather was kind of decent. I was gonna drive. I said, you know what, let me not drive, let me take an Uber. I got out of an Uber across the street. I came over here to say what's up to my friends. I said what's up to one person, and in the midst of me saying what's up to the next person, you know, greeting the next person, the shots started firing. It was about 9 shots. Once I felt it, I looked down and I seen the blood, and then my body just collapsed. I believe the shots came from that direction up this way because I was facing this way kind of, and I got hit right here. I don't even know who the intended target was. From what I heard, the shots were fired from around the corner of the building. Like the guy just stuck his arm around the corner from the building and started shooting like that. It was 4 of us hit at one time. So I scooted backwards and I got underneath a car till the shots stopped. Then one of my homeboys tried to pull me from underneath the car. Somebody else suggested leave him alone because they didn't know where I was hit at the time. I seen so much blood, I thought an artery was hit. And I was scared that I was gonna bleed out. But yeah, I was scared. I'm man enough to sit here and say that.
KAVI was created to really provide a service and help people in the community understand and be able to process trauma. This is my 20th year as a physician, and growing up in Brooklyn and treating patients in New York City as well as in Chicago, we saw this common theme of violence. And taking it up another notch, this other thing, which is recurrent violence. And when you start looking at people coming in with medical problems and you see a pattern of recurrence, you start to ask yourself why? Why aren't we doing something more specifically to just eradicate its existence? And I don't know if I talked to Yosef about it, we're seeing a lot more older people coming in who were assaulted.
So I do the initial contact here at Kings County Hospital. We get a trauma code that comes through, a level 1. I go and meet the patient by the bedside. I usually, read off the body language, versus communicating, because every time I go in there and say, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? We could easily get oh, I'm fine, I'm okay, versus your body language is telling me that you're really not okay. So I just try to, give them the time to breathe, pause, introduce myself, let them know what I'm here to do.
My role at KAVI is I'm a violence intervention specialist. I started in January. What we do basically at KAVI, we deal with the patients that come in with gunshot wounds, stab wounds, and assault victims. And we advocate for them, we talk to them. They might not feel safe in their neighborhood anymore. They might need housing. They might need an emergency transfer. So we help them with that. We help them with transportation. We help them with wraparound services.
So how was your first day?
My first day, I think it went well. But he said he never seen a person a day in his life, and that happened on his block. So he don't really even know too much about the person. So I don't feel it'll be a retaliation or nothing like that.
I go in there, I don't sugarcoat it. I just be me, even just by saying, hello, are you okay? Those words go a long way. And, our patients look for that. They look for just someone coming in there and speaking to them and letting them know that, everything will be okay.
For some reason, the ambulance got there immediately. I remember telling them to take my sneakers off so they wouldn't get too much blood on them. I had a good pair of jeans on. I knew they were gonna cut those. I believe once they started cutting the jeans, I just blacked out after that. By the time I made it to the hospital, it was actually Christmas. It was after 12. There were no surgeons available that day, I believe. So I had surgery on the 26th, early in the morning, first thing in the morning. Kings County got me into surgery. But before the surgery, they drilled 2 holes in my knee, and they put a rod in there, and then they put a weight system on the end of the rod to pull the bones down to keep it in place, which was excruciating pain. There was one bullet that went in about right here and came out on my upper thigh. But in this passage, it destroyed everything there. But when they explained to me the damage and I seen the x-ray, I was shocked. I was in awe, because to know that that's your bone was once like this and now is like that, it's something that is unfathomable. You can't even describe it, really.
But yeah, I can definitely reach out to them and give them a call.
Okay.
So funny, because when I actually went to go visit Derek was kind of skeptical on, speaking, because, we coming in, we're like, who is these people?
My sister Taisha, my first memory of her, is she comes in with her suit, her uniform. I don't know if it was the morphine or what. I thought she was the cops. And I was just like, listen, I spoke to y'all already.
I went back to visit Derek again the next day, and, I tried to be consistent during the time that he was here, so he know that I'm for real, and it ain't a game. And then Derek started opening up. Then Derek started telling me his needs and his wants.
One thing I can say is the emotional support. They talk to you and check on you constantly to the point that sometimes you're like, all right, I'll talk to you later. But they definitely check on you. They definitely make sure that you're mentally stable. They ask you all the time about your physical therapy, if you need anything. Due to COVID, I couldn't have any guests. I couldn't have any visitors. I couldn't see my kids. I couldn't see anyone from my family. FaceTime was it. FaceTime was everything. But there's only so much you could do on FaceTime.
So Derek was here on Christmas Eve and actually spent New Year's here as well. So he was really upset with that as well during the time because nobody wants to be in here. It's Christmas time, the holidays, you want to be home with the kids. I had to make it my effort to, make sure that Derek stood and lift his spirits, and his spirit was always uplifted and he wouldn't turn into a Grinch. I treat this as if I'm treating my family. Even when I'm doing an intervention and an assessment with the patient, I'm not looking at them like, oh, they're just a patient that comes in. Like, they are my family as well. I feel like I have adopted another brother or sister or uncle or auntie. The first thing Derek said was he able to go to a rehabilitation center? We assisted Derek going to the rehabilitation center, and then he was communicating with us that he was gonna be homeless, he ain't gonna have nowhere to go, and if there's anything that we can do. We made that connection, got Derek in a hotel right now.
What they did was spectacular, actually. It was really fast. Once I was told that I could put weight back on my leg, they got me out of there within 72 hours to a really good spot. I really appreciate them for that.
So we collaborate with different organizations. We have organizations like Man Up Inc., GMAC, SOS Save Our Streets, Life Camps, and we just completely do the network and get our patients on board,
We started off with our school-based program first, partially because we wanted to make sure that people didn't have to become patients. Trauma itself is a costly process, but it's also an avoidable process under many circumstances.
It's a lot of things, It's a lot of mental stuff too that I've yet to address, but I feel it. I've had maybe like 2 nightmares so far, flashbacks. I've always had my head on a swivel, but now it's like constantly 360. I'm looking around, looking over my shoulder.
When someone has a life-threatening injury due to violence, people are more likely to consider changes in their lifestyle to decrease their risks of violence. And so that's a moment where, a little window opens up where we can reach out to them, figure out what services they need that can maybe lead to stability and also cool things down.
There was a patient we took care of yesterday. He was assaulted. He was hit in the head multiple times with a blunt object as a part of a robbery. And he said, I grew up in the streets. I'm not going to do anything, but I have a number of children, and I am worried that they may go out and try to seek justice and find the person who did this to me in our respective community and retaliate. But let's find out from them where he does feel safe, and then if we have to get more federal folks involved because of that safety transfer, then we can do so.
Yeah.
So training people in how to prevent retaliation is one element of violence prevention and violence intervention. We know you're scared. We know that a lot of things may be going on in your mind, and we know that you may have some other things come up in your mind while you're sitting here laying in this hospital bed. So how can we support you? If you are concerned about retaliation, why?
It could be fear, it could be anger. It could be you tired of seeing this person around that did something to your family member.
It's not just that patient who you're intervening with and talking about retaliation. You're talking to their family members. You're talking to their support circle.
Well, when I was 17 years old, I went to jail for attempted murder of a police officer. And off of that bed, I did 8 years off of that, and that wasn't where I wanted to be. I let them know where I come from and where I'm not trying to see them go. I'm not trying to see them go down the same path that I went through, so I'm educating them on things not to do.
I just kind of break the ice and just tell them like, hey, I can understand the things that you're going through. I was incarcerated 6.5 years for assaulting someone with a deadly weapon, so I can tell you I don't know how it is to sit up in the hospital bed, but I know the feeling of how I felt when I had to get the news of one of the victims that I assaulted had to be in the hospital bed, dealing with those type of injuries that they sustained.
There's a young man that we work with in KAVI, one of our earliest students, and I remember he put a hit out on another student. This is a high school age kid who put a hit out on another kid, and we talk about it years later. He doesn't even remember why he put the hit out. He called off the hit after we talked with him.
When somebody's thinking of retaliation, there's only two things you're gonna see: death or jail.
Well, full recovery from bone tissue to the healing of the rod and the screw that's in me is a year. But I could be up and functional within like 6 months. I'll probably do some office work for a little while. But yeah, I work for a cool company, so I'm going back there. I love Brooklyn. If they could put me in Manhattan, I go to Manhattan. Just want to get away from Brooklyn for a little while. I don't want my kids growing up in this environment that we're going through currently. Hopefully it'll get better, but the goal is to get them out of any type of danger.
Anyone that treats cancer wants to prevent cancer. I think anyone that treats gunshots and stabbing should want to prevent them. The best thing it would be if I worked myself out of a job and found something else to treat. There's plenty of work to do.
I've never really been a gun person. I went to a shooting range once in my life. I guess guns serve a purpose in the right hands. In the wrong hands, just doesn't make any sense.